in the Oscar race for Best Actor. It looks like it's going to be one of those years where we know who's going to win early on. It looks like Gary Oldman in The Darkest Hour as Winston Churchill. If we defer to the odds at Gold Derby, Paul, what say you?
Well, I think you're absolutely right that, it's Gary Oldman. They probably already started engraving his name on the statue to save time. I mean, it's very much reminds me of Daniel Day-Lewis in Lincoln. Ironically, probably Oldman's biggest competitor this year. And it just was his to lose. I think Oldman, everyone's talking about this transformative performance of his. Literally, other than his eyes, you don't see that it's Gary Oldman at all. And he plays packed on prosthetics and weight and to play Churchill. So Day-Lewis wins his Oscar for playing one of America's greatest presidents, and Oldman could win an Oscar for playing one of Britain's greatest prime ministers. And it's just, he's well respected in the industry. He's only had one nomination, which I think surprises people. I think they probably think he's been nominated more times, but he's worked with so many people. It's in a movie that I'm sure will contend for Best Picture. And in a way, he's got an extra screener out there with Dunkirk, because Dunkirk tells very vividly the story of what happens on those beaches, whereas Darkest Hour is back in London and shows what Churchill did to make Dunkirk happen.
And let's point out that everybody who plays Churchill tends to win awards. John Lithgow just won at the Emmys for playing Churchill in The Crown. And if you
could that be a negative? I mean, could people start going, "Oh, I'm sick of"? I mean, everybody plays Churchill. Well, we had somebody in an interview. I won't say it on this thing, but you can go back and figure it out. Who said back in the summer said, I'm over this. Everybody trots out. All these British actors trot out their trot out their Churchills and trot out their Hamlets. So,
well,
there might be. We love good races, so that might be just a little fly in the ointment here for him of just. Can somebody else step forward and take away that front runner status?
So who benefits, Chris? Who benefits then if
Well, I'll tell you, I won't say who it was, but when Marcus and I left the screening last week for Call Me By Your Name, somebody really high up in the industry was getting on the elevator with us at the same time. And how'd you like the movie? And she said, oh, it was fantastic. She said that Timothy Chalamet that's one of the best performances I've seen in years. So
But Tom, I mean, Best Actress loves an ingenue. Best Actor, not so much. I mean, he'd be almost a decade younger than Adrian Brody, who's the record holder.
And all of that. They like the fresh face. If it's in a movie that really carries a Best Picture contender, and Call Me By Your Name is that little movie that could be this year's Moonlight. In a way, it has so many obvious parallels. It's beloved, and there's a sense of discovery here. The kid is in several movies, of course. He's also in Lady Bird and something else too. But it is a young role. But I could see him picking up the Critics Awards. I could see that movie gaining momentum, and I could see him being a threat. I think the more obvious threat at this point in the race is from Daniel Day-Lewis, who has won 3 times in lead actor. If he wins a 4th time, of course, he will tie Katharine Hepburn as the biggest winner of acting awards at the Academy history. He tends to win when he's in those rare years he makes a performance, and this is a big commanding performance again. But it's not.
I will say this though, Zach Laws and I were having this discussion the other night. Think about the 3 times he's won. They've been totally transformative type performances. If you watch the trailer for this, and that's all anybody's seen, he looks like Daniel Day-Lewis, and he's not transforming at all, at least from what we've seen.
That's a good point.
But Daniel, I mean, he's in a Paul Thomas Anderson movie. One of those wins was for a Paul Thomas Anderson movie. Daniel, do you think that the Academy is at all sentimental? Because he has said that he's retiring from making movies. I mean, do you think that Tom, we always talk about hugs, people getting a hug.
He's not retiring. We know that.
Yeah, I'm skeptical about the fact, whether he's actually retiring. He makes films so infrequently relative to other actors of his stature that, he could come back in 5 years and 10 years and 15 years, if he's still kicking around by then and say, oh, here's a good, Paul Thomas Anderson's next good script in 15 years or something, and be like, would you make my movie? I think he'd say yes. So I'm not sure, they're going to be sentimental on that regard. But I do think that given his career, the fact that he said he's retiring will make people focus on his career. And I feel like if somebody's going to have 4 Oscars and tie Katharine Hepburn, and if it's not Meryl Streep this year, potentially, I don't think they'd mind Daniel Day-Lewis having 4 Oscars.
And Tom, do you think that, because you've been covering this beat for so well,
You bit.
No, I suddenly stopped because I said you've been covering this beat. I didn't say since Emil Jannings, but soon thereafter. Do you think that Daniel Day-Lewis is like Sean Penn, these several acts where you don't have to campaign? In fact, like it almost that they just get these awards.
When you're in that actors, that lofty thing, you're given a free pass. Yeah, I think that's true. But Gary
Oldman kind of qualifies for that, though. He's in that similar group. He doesn't have the hardware to show for it, but people really respect him as a character actor.
Yeah,
but I was just going to say, Chris,
he was around Los Angeles.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. That he will work a room. And Marcus, I'm curious because we agree on the other 2 nominees, which are Tom Hanks and Jake Gyllenhaal, and neither of them has really gotten any love from the Oscars as of late. I mean, Tom Hanks, I think you have to go all the way back to Castaway for a nomination. So could you talk about just both of those roles and why you think they're going to be nominated?
Well, Tom Hanks, I mean, he's probably one of the best actors working today. And the fact that he did get snubbed for Captain Phillips, which was a crime, and Saving Mr. Banks and Bridge of Spies, I mean, is that a pattern that we should pay attention to? Are they just over him because he's won 2? I don't know. And then Jake Gyllenhaal. I remember, Tom, Jake and you had a conversation a few years ago for, what was the Nightcrawler? Was that it? Mm-hmm. And I think you told him, if you want to get nominated, you have to do the physical transformation, like we've seen so many people win before. And so I don't know. I have them in as placeholders right now.
But I think Stronger is such a well-reviewed movie. I mean, it
is.
But it bombed box office. Not that matters, of course. Still Alice didn't make any money, and Julianne Moore won.
Look, I think it's Gary Oldman and then 4 other people. I really don't think it matters who you put in after him, because I mean, I'm looking at our experts' predictions right now. We have 24 experts at Gold Derby. All 24 are picking Gary Oldman. It's very rare that happens this early. There's not even somebody that's trying to call an upset. They're all just falling in line.
Right. Yeah, one contender here who is better than the gossip out there in the field is Denzel Washington with his Roman
J. Israel Esquire. He plays a lawyer who gets one of the most challenging cases of his career.
In the 70s, right?
No.
In the 70s.
I think he dresses that way, but I don't think it is a period piece.
Oh.
But the point is that there was a lot of early faith in him getting nominated after having lost surprisingly last year for Fences, which in an unsympathetic role. This movie was being downplayed, but now all of a sudden it is getting good response. His performances anyway. So he's really in there. And he surprisingly did campaign last year. A lot of us Oscar watchers thought he wouldn't, but he was out there pumping the flesh, and that was impressive. So I think we have to consider him truly in the race.
One thing about him that even from his own career that I wonder about, the last time he had a really strong shot of winning, which the Hurricane, where he won the Golden Globe and won some other things, and then he surprisingly lost, and then the very next time he got in, he surprisingly won. I mean, that wasn't a huge shocker last year that he lost, but it was a really tight race. Mm-hmm. Could it be, even though he has 2 Oscars, could there be, if this movie gets well reviewed, if he wins a couple of critics awards, is it possible that he could be somebody we're just overlooking here? That could they feel like, oh, you've had Fences and this in a row, we want to give it to you?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that yes to all of those points. But Chris, the factoid you like to mention often is as important tea leaf is, will the movie be nominated for Best Picture? Now, of course, Still Alice wasn't. There are occasions where you can win Best Picture. I mean, you can win an acting award if your movie's not nominated for Best Picture. But there's no one who thinks that Roman Israel is going to be nominated for Best Picture. Not at this point.
Both of his other wins were not in Best Picture nominees: Glory and Training Day.
Hmm.
I knew you.
That was in the days of Best Picture nominees.
That's true.
But do you think? I mean, I guess the problem he has is he has 2 Oscars, and so with Still Alice, I mean, the Academy was just thrilled that they finally had a chance to give Julianne Moore an Oscar. And
if he had only had one going into last year, and it only being supporting, never a lead, he would have been more of a. He would have easily won, especially with some of Casey's problems.
I will say Tom Hanks is looking for number 3, and Denzel is looking for number 3. Daniel Day-Lewis is looking for number 4. I think all of that really helps Gary Oldman, because here you have a guy that's never won. I realize he has 1 nomination, but he feels overdue. Doesn't he just have that feeling like, I can't believe we've never given Gary Oldman an Oscar?
Yeah, Gary Oldman, for that reason, it feels more to me like the Jeff Bridges year with Crazy Heart. This feels like, okay, he's a veteran actor. He's been around. Everyone respects him. This is just the time. This is just the right movie, the right time, and it's just kind of going to be. It feels inevitable at this point, although it's early. It's dangerous to say that this early on, but that's how it starts to feel.
We've got Hugh Jackman up higher on this list than he probably should be, given the scuttlebutt that Greatest Showman is more of a Golden Globe movie. I'm looking at our list of odds from our experts. James Franco in The Disaster Artist is at number 8. This is a movie that I have seen. It's a parody of the worst movie ever made. But so was Ed Wood, and it did very well at the Oscars with Plan 9 for Outer Space, whatever it was. In this case, it's a really bad movie called The Room that has become a cult favorite for being so bad it's now good. Franco plays the lead character. It's a very creepy movie and a creepy performance, but that's what makes it resonant too. I think he will be nominated at the Globes, and it's being campaigned vigorously around town, so don't dismiss it.
And it's also
Andrew Garfield and
I mean, it's a big labor of love for him.
Yeah,
James Franco is actually in my top 5 for Best Actor at the moment. Just trying to figure out how to fill out those spots. He's a past nominee. Just from the basis of the trailer and who he's playing, it's a showy performance. It's a comedy, which can sometimes be work against you, but not always. I think the fact that he directed it, he's gonna probably get it at the Globes. I think that's one we're underestimating at this point.
Maybe so.
And then, unfortunately, Marshall, which is a wonderful film and tells sort of the early life of the first African-American Supreme Court Justice, Thurgood Marshall, Chadwick Boseman, it underperformed at the box office, but it was reasonably well received. I mean, it'd be nice to see this rising star recognized. The one I'm curious about, and it's sort of in the Jake Gyllenhaal school, is Andrew Garfield in Breathe. I mean, nominated last year for Hacksaw Ridge, making a big splash this year in London, and Angels in America coming to Broadway with that in the spring. True story, man struck down by polio in his prime. Claire Foy is the dutiful wife. I mean, in the old days, Tom, this again would have been a slam dunk for a nomination.
It is, I know, and it kind of looks like The Theory of Everything now. It's been there, done that. A paralyzed person. But it's not somebody we know. It's not a Stephen Hawking in this case. But it does kind of fill in all of the requisite Oscar slots, and he's very good at it. And it's a sweet little movie, but it is a little movie, and it's transformative for him in terms of all the physicality of it, having to play somebody with paralysis. But the problem he has is he's still Andrew Garfield up on that screen. They want you to be Helen Mirren becoming Queen Elizabeth. They want you to be transformative, and
Gary Oldman becoming Churchill.
Exactly. Now that's not always the case, but and Andrew Garfield can certainly get in for a nomination, but I don't think he's in the running to win.
Well, I think what's nice, though, is while we've sort of got a fairly sparse Best Actor field, when we talk in a minute about Best Actress, I mean, that could have 10 nominees in it, all of whom would be very credible. So that's a nice change for the to struggling to figure out which 5 women get nominated.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right, well, let's wrap it up here and pick up Best Actress next. Thanks.